So, Tom, I thought we'd start today with Justin Trudeau. Got asked a couple of questions out at an event today, one on Roxham Road, which we'll get to in a minute. But he also had to address this issue of the Globe and Mail story. Bob Fife was involved in this, right? Chinese spying on Canadian politicians, setting up things like bribes to basically try to, I guess, force elections, control elections. Here's what he said.
The issue of the integrity of our elections, the integrity of our democracies, is something that all democracies around the world are struggling with right now because we are seeing systematic attempts at interference by countries like China and Russia and others who want to destabilize democracies, who want to undermine people's confidence in their institutions, who want to sow chaos in people's confidence in their democracies.
Okay, so there's a general overview, Tom. I didn't hear anything about what we're gonna do about this.
That's a great point. The other thing that's interesting is it's been a moving target trying to get Mr. Trudeau to say anything. We'll all recall a couple of months back, he's with President Xi. They're at a big international event, and he gives them what for sticking his nose in our elections. And his staff and the people around him, his entourage, boast to the media that was the subject of conversation when Trudeau had his index finger under the nose of President Xi. Next day, Xi is complaining that you don't do that. You don't talk publicly about what you've said in a private conversation. But at the same time, what was Xi doing? He was essentially confirming that was the conversation. He never tried to deny that they had been interfering, and they started doing a little bit of backpedaling, the Chinese government, to try to cover that up because, of course, they were never going to admit that. Mr. Trudeau gets back into the House of Commons after that trip. Lo and behold, he can't remember anything. They keep asking him questions in question period. What about Chinese interference? Oh, I'm not sure. Oh, we got to keep our elections clean. And then lo and behold, the Globe and Mail gets hold of all of the documents that prove that the government was briefed in detail, which ridings, which MPs were helped by the Chinese government, which were attacked by the Chinese government with, having volunteers and money flow to their competitors, because these were people the Chinese government wanted gone from Canadian politics because they found them unfriendly. Mr. Trudeau knew about that, but he wasn't coming clean. And it's disturbing because yesterday, the only thing Mr. Trudeau said he would do about this is try to find out who within CSIS had leaked that to, as you correctly say, Bob Fife and the Globe and Mail and other journalists there. His real concern should be what the Chinese are doing, and that's what he's trying to correct today by taking that stronger stance, giving that general overview. There are countries that are trying to destabilize democracy. But he's lost a lot of credibility by constantly changing his angle of attack and what his version is. And I think that's been a real problem all along for him.
So from one problem to the next, he was asked about Roxham Road today as well. Didn't have much of an answer there other than, well, if we close that one, the one that's sort of become boilerplate, if we close it here, they'll just cross somewhere else along our 6,000-mile border. Is this a good enough answer?
It's not a very smart answer because the Canadian government is supposed to do a certain number of basic things well. Like taking care of airports. I don't know, delivering passports. Hey, taking care of the immigration system, including watching our borders. But all of that seems to have broken down at the same time. Now, I don't want to play Pierre Poilievre's game because he's saying that everything is broken. But I think that when you realize a lot of things are not working, that's pretty darn close to a lot of things are broken. So Mr. Trudeau does an amazing job on a bunch of things, especially at the international level. He talks these big values issues quite well. But when it comes to just the day-to-day grind of running the government and the big public administration that we've got, it is falling apart. And that's not a partisan view. That's just an objective view from somebody who spent a lot of time in politics, but also a lot of time in government before going into politics. And I've never seen anything like it, Aaron. This government really has got to figure out what they're going to do to put some people in place who can actually run government agencies and departments.
So, Tom, I want to ask the question because I've heard now opposition politicians speaking out about Roxham Road. We know about Francois Legault's letter, the open letter in the Globe and Mail. Is it just me, or are politicians suddenly falling all over themselves to express, their concern and dismay over the way that asylum seekers are being treated, when up until, a month ago, the only thing they were talking about was we have too many, we can't accommodate them. Now, all of a sudden, they seem to be concerned with their welfare and their dignity, or is it just me?
Well, All of that has been part of the approach because you do have to treat people who are legitimate asylum seekers with dignity.
No. I'm not disputing that. I'm saying, well, of course you have to do that. But I wasn't hearing them talking about this up until about a month ago. They were simply saying, we can't do this anymore. We're not going to do it anymore. Ottawa has to do something. Now, all of a sudden, they're falling all over themselves saying, oh, they're not being treated the right way, as if it's a sudden concern. It wasn't there a month or two ago.
Well, it was a political concern, and it's been a political football for a couple of years here in Quebec. But one of the things that is being picked up on the commentary side, on the French side, is the following. This didn't become an issue, a live wire issue for Mr. Trudeau or the people around him, until those people who had been coming across Roxham Road irregularly started being brought into other provinces, in particular Ontario. When it became a political problem in the Greater Toronto Area, then all of a sudden Mr. Trudeau started talking about it a lot more and what had to be done. I'm still trying to hope that when Biden comes in, there's a bit of a plan around Trudeau and himself. They're going to have the ability to come up with something to change this safe third country agreement, which is the root of the problem. Because what you said at the outset is correct. If you shut down Roxham Road, the next road, 6 kilometers down the border, is going to become the new crossing point. And then it's going to be a question of hopscotch. If you can't turn them away at Roxham, you can't turn them away at the next crossing point. The issue is the safe third country agreement, where people are assumed to be treated fairly in the United States, but the Americans are shutting down their border even more, and they won't be respecting international law. So that might become a reason to walk away from that safe third party agreement, but it's not an easy answer.
Tom, I heard someone today weighing in on this, suggesting that Joe Biden could care less about this. And given the numbers here being as small as they are, we're talking 39,000 compared to what the U.S. takes in. This won't even be high on his agenda.
No, and the Americans are looking at a couple of million a year along the southern borders, and it's not getting better, and it's a huge political issue for them in the United States, especially at the Texas-Mexican border. So it's you're quite right. In terms of absolute numbers, it's small potatoes. But go back to something that happened just a couple of days ago. The maritime premiers are together. They're talking licensure and credentialing of medical doctors so they can move easier from one province to the next. And the question comes up, because it was a live wire issue already, if there are people coming in seeking asylum, will you be able to take some? And one of the premiers said, yeah, we'll take our fair share. We figure that we could probably take between 100 and 125. Generous, no question. The problem is Quebec already has 40,000 people just last year. Yeah. That's on top of, there are other, not just at Roxham, but across the country, there are 20,000 other asylum seekers. And Quebec, of course, takes in between 50 and 60 regular, 50 and 60,000 regular immigrants who have gone through the whole process. And by the way, that's another problem, because you and I are talking about one bit of the problem, which is the drain on resources like education and healthcare and the welfare system. But we're not even talking about the fact that this is a really bad signal for Canada to be sending, because there are millions of people who would love to come to Canada. They're following all the rules. They're playing by the rules. And then they realize that there's a 50-50 chance of getting in if you just walk across the border with a few suitcases.
And therein lies the problem. I'm getting the impression, Tom, am I right, that this is now, as the Premier said in that letter, this is no longer a Quebec issue or concern. It's a Canada concern. You getting the sense that the rest of the country is being made aware of this now?
They're being made aware of it because it's starting to affect them. The mayor, one of the mayors in the Niagara Falls region, was saying, this is all very nice, but all of the motels we have here that are the hub of our economic activity, because they bring in tons and tons of tourists, they're all full. There's no room in any of them, and we can't have tourists. So once it starts to affect the Greater Toronto Area, now I'm exaggerating a bit, putting the Niagara region in there, but it's Ontario, and it's the hub of Ontario. I think that's why Mr. Trudeau and the people around him are starting to pay attention to it. As long as it was just him and Legault, he had no trouble, scolding Legault and finger wagging at him. But now that it's a big problem in Ontario, I think the pressure is on like never before.
All right, let's take a quick left turn before we wrap up. Hydro-Quebec today posting record profits, $4.56 billion for 2022. Wow, that's not bad considering all the problems they had during the course of the year to still be able to make that kind of money. But, oh, look, their CEO is gone.
And look, they've got a monopoly. And look, they get to decide their prices now. It used to be the Energy Board, and now it's more and more straight up the government of Quebec. Oh, and look, we're selling a lot of electricity, dirt cheap, to south of the border, to New York in particular. And look, we're being told that we've got to start being more careful with electricity, and we're going to pay a lot more, because otherwise we're going to have to start damming a whole bunch more rivers. Look, I think that Hydro-Quebec is one of the few things in the government that actually works. I'm keeping a really close eye on Pierre Fitzgibbon and François Legault. I'd love to see who they're going to put in there, because Pierre Fitzgibbon's idea of economic development in Quebec generally and in Montreal in particular, let's put thousands of video poker machines and video lottery machines near the Bell Centre. That'll really help. Put that in one of the poorest parts of Montreal, as if they didn't have enough social and economic problems already in that area. And let's make sure that we start taking people's money out of their pockets and sticking it more with Lotto Quebec. This is the vision of Legault and Fitzgibbon, this pauperization of Montreal, and it's a really sad thing to see.